Serious, people who were named for negative reasons in suicide letters, what is your story? How did their death impact your life? My mother had BPD and we had a horrible relationship. My brother was her favorite. She left him a long, loving letter. My letter was brief and said, please find something in your life to make you happy other than a man, rolling eyes face, par for the course. This was 3.5 years ago. I am still struggling with the consequences of how she raised me, our shitty relationship, and her suicide. My mother attempted suicide by overdose when I was around 15. My brother was around 13 and my sister around 10. The attempt was unsuccessful, and I assume she was sectioned for a while as we had to stay with my aunt for a few months. My dad worked overseas. There are large parts of this time of my life that I don't remember, but I do recall that when we all returned home, after my mother got out of hospital, I was changing my bedding and found the suicide note which my mother had left under my pillow. The note basically blamed me and a few other people for her attempt. She was an alcoholic and probably had some other mental health issues. She was very paranoid and felt that everyone was acting against her, including me. The final part of the note said that I was an awful person and she didn't want me at her funeral. I never told her I found the note. By this point I was already quite numb to her behaviors. A few years later I left and didn't speak to her for around 6 years, which I feel was the best thing that could have happened to me at the time. I felt guilty for leaving my siblings, but also felt that they would be better off as I seemed to bring out the very worst in her. When she contacted me again, it was through my sister on the phone, kind of a trick. When I hung up I cried. I was surprised how it affected me. I am in a good place and have been for a while. We are in sporadic contact, which is pleasant and superficial. We don't live close, so there is very little pressure. My mother no longer drinks and seems to be a happier, healthier person. Sorry, this got long. I think, in my case, the main impact was that it gave me permission to detach from her emotionally, which was actually better for me in the long run. A little different, but I was one of a number of classmates on the Columbine shooters hit list. I was on both Eric and Dylan's lists. I received a call from a detective about 2 weeks after the shooting and he told me I was on the lists and asked why I thought I was on them. He also named off some other classmates and asked the same question. I was surprised to be on Dylan's list, who I liked and considered a friend, albeit not a close one and just at school. Eric and I were in German together every semester for 4 years, and though we were good friends in junior high, we stopped getting along in high school, for no reason other than we had different friend groups. We got into a yelling argument in class our senior year. I completely forget what it was about, but we definitely did not get along. I never bullied him or anyone. I wasn't popular or on any sports teams. We were friends that grew apart. I wasn't shocked when I was told I was on Eric's list, but I was with Dylan. For many years afterwards, I was intensely guilty. I had suicidal thoughts. I was lucky to feel close to a church pastor who I was able to talk to about this. 2 friends of mine were killed, and I really felt like I was to blame. I visited the parents of one of these friends a number of times that summer, and when I would come back from college, always would tell myself that this would be the visit. I told them and apologized, but I never did. It's been almost 20 years now, and I still feel guilty. I know Eric was dark, and at a place mentally where everything wasn't entirely rational, and that he probably influenced Dylan into a lot of this as well. I was very lucky that day. I was in the cafeteria, but got out quickly unharmed. The detective told me I was near one of the propane bombs they had brought to the school earlier and would have probably been killed if those went off. It's moved from something I thought about every day for the first few years after it all happened, to thinking about it every once in a while. Columbine comes up a surprising amount. My kids participate in Rachel's Challenge each year, which is an anti-bullying program named after one of the victims of the shooting. Overall, and almost 20 years after, I still feel guilty. I think about what I could have done. I think sometimes if they had seen me and tried to shoot me instead, would some of the other people who weren't on his list be able to get out? My ex-girlfriend took her own life in September of last year. She was 20 and just a gorgeous person. She had struggled with depression and couldn't find the right balance of family, friends, study, work and life, and this ate at her. She wasn't a weak person, just a sad soul. The weeks prior I had visited her. She was attending university in a rural town and it was a beautiful time. We had Chinese one night and watched 2 movies at the local cinema back to back. Everything was normal, or appeared so, and I didn't realize it was the same. Sometime during the early hours of the morning on the 28th of September, 2017, she had taken her own life in her room on campus, and wasn't found until later that day when her peers and student liaison was unable to get a response from her. She didn't have a suicide note per se. She had tailored text messages to a few close people: her mother, father, brother and sister and her closest friend. She had started my message, which I received at 2:11 a.m., with "I feel like I don't have a future, and I'm just stealing yours." It was almost 2,500 words spread over various long, saddening text messages. She detailed all the moments we shared, that made her happy, that made her sad, and I'd like to say I had a positive influence in her life, but I'll never know. All I have is the memories and a dull heartache. She was a sad girl, and I am now a sad boy. I was in the 9th grade, she was my best friend in the world. And, I mean, we both struggled with mental health issues, plus being middle children and feeling neglected. She ended up overdosing on some sort of anti-anxiety medicine or something like that. We had had a fight the day before because she was sort of jealous of the girl I was dating at the time. In the note she told me she loved me, but I was just going to forget her for this new girl and she couldn't live with that. In a week it'll be the 8th-year anniversary. I know you'll never read this, but Beth, I will never fucking forget you. Never. Removed. The worst residual effect is waking up from a dream about them. In the dream and for a few moments after you wake up, you feel like they are still alive, and then reality sets in. And it's almost like the first time you found out all over again. I still think of him almost every day, still dream about him sometimes. The day I found out he died, I remember driving on the highway, fantasizing about getting back together with him after he got his life together. I remember the last time I ever saw him, and the look on his face that didn't mean anything to me until after I found out he died, and realizing that he knew it was the last time he would see me. He was so young, and I often wish I could go back in time and tell him to just keep fighting for a couple of years, and then he'd be past it and okay. His family was completely destroyed and all of them pretty much gave up after he died. I still have panic attacks whenever I can't get a hold of someone I love because the pain that comes with finding out you've lost them forever is almost unbearable at first. Falling asleep is the hardest part, not because you might dream about them but because waking up from the dream hurts so bad. I was named in a suicide letter in, I guess, a positive light. Her note said she was sorry, and she loved us, me, and one of her rather close friends, but she couldn't do it anymore. The last time I saw her she said we'd go get cupcakes the next week. Instead she killed herself over Valentine's Day, with the handgun her ex-boyfriend bought her. I cannot put into words what this did to my life. It's like everything was split into a time before, and a time after, and nothing has been the same since. It has been 5, nearly 6 years and I still think about her every day. I wish I had pushed her harder to get help. But at the same time I know she was determined and had made up her mind. For those thinking about it, I think the best advice I have heard is as follows: think of one thing, maybe it's small, one thing that you want to see how it turns out. Maybe you're waiting for the next got book, maybe you want to see the next episode of your favorite TV show, maybe your favorite niece has a birthday party next month. Just live a little longer for that thing, and while you're doing that keep collecting things. And of course, if you can, seek professional help. Therapy and meds will do wonders to unfuck the bad brain chemistry that lies and tells you that life is not worth living. And I'm available if people want.